All right. Hello and welcome to another practical IT video. Hopefully YouTube didn't screw up the time. Now it appears from my phone that I am live. All right. So tonight I wanted to go through an install of the Fog Project server. I have installed Ubuntu Budgie, and we're going to use this as our demo machine, just to show that yes, in fact, you can run this on a desktop version of Linux. In general, I don't recommend it, but I feel like there have been a lot of people asking questions that may not be ready for a Linux server environment. So, as a way to dip your toe into this and still have some of the graphical utilities to rely on, we're going to do an install on a graphical Linux installation. This is running in VirtualBox. One of the questions I got early on when I started doing fog videos was, can I run it in a LAN environment instead of just in virtualization? And this is one of those questions that screams, I don't understand networking. And that's all right. But part of the reason I'm here and doing these videos is to help bring people up to speed and educate them a little bit. So just a little background, virtualization is on the network. It's on your LAN, depending on how you've got it configured. So, yes, this works in VirtualBox. Yes, it works on real hardware. Just things to keep in mind as we go through this. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we'll get this party started. All right, so you should see my Budgie desktop machine here. I'll run neofetch just to show you what I've got here. Done updates. I've installed a couple of packages, mainly Git, the build essential packages, because I'll eventually want to install the VM VirtualBox guest editions, and neofetch, of course, and htop. So this is 2 virtual processors, couple gigs of RAM, and I actually gave this a 250 gig virtual hard disk, because my goal is to actually go through the installation and go through installation, registering a host, capturing an image, and then deploying that out to a new VM. For this video, I am going to do this all on my production network. So there's going to be one spot where I'm going to put myself back on screen and do something on my network configuration to allow this to happen that I'm not going to show, but we'll talk about that more when the time comes. All right, so the first thing I want to do is find out what my IP address is. And it's 74.112. And so I'm going to bring over my Mac terminal. And we'll SSH in. And it's saying that host key verification failed. So I'm going to bring this over on the other screen temporarily. And we'll take care of this real quick like. Okay. And we'll try that again. So this is because I, oops. There we go. This is because I had set up this virtual machine earlier. And I'd run through this once just to see how it was going to work. But the reason that I want to do this, and I'll bring my browser window over here, is it's going to be a lot easier to grab the download for the Fog project installation files if I come over here and I'm going to grab the link location, and then I can come into downloads and do wget and the file name and path, and it's going to go ahead and download this, and then we'll just go back to the server and continue the installation from there. So in the meantime, if you've got any questions, if anybody's out there, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will see about answering those as we go. So this is normally a pretty quick file to pull down, but it might take just a minute or two. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And so we are actually on the server. Make this a little bit bigger. And we're in downloads. And we need to extract the file. Okay, so we've extracted the file, and then we want to change into Fog Project /bin. And we've got our install file here. So if you really want to, you can go ahead and look at this install file. It's just a straight bash install file. It's got different provisions for different Linux distributions, and you know, this is one of those things where I would love to use this as an experiment to start learning Ansible a little deeper, because I think a lot of this could be done a little bit more efficiently with an Ansible script, and you know, at least part of it could. So there might be some pieces where you would want to do things a little bit differently, or you might have multiple Ansible playbooks to allow your different options. So all in the realm of possibilities, and who knows, something I might tackle over the winter months. Okay, so we're in the bin folder inside the Fog project download folder, and we are going to go ahead and run this sudo./install fog.sh. It'll prompt for the password. All right, so it detects which distribution of Linux you're running, Red Hat based, Debian based, or Arch based. So yes, if you really wanted to run it on Manjaro or Manjaro, however you want to pronounce that, you could. You could also run it on Red Hat Enterprise. You could run it on CentOS. Whatever floats your boat. I'm not here to start a war on which distro is best. That's far in my past arguing about that stuff. I have my preferences. You have your preferences. I think we'll agree that we'd rather be running Linux than running Windows. So, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. All right, so option number 2 is for Debian base, and that's where we're at. We are going to do a normal installation. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter again to keep the default. All right. Would you like to change the default network interface from ENP0S3? All right, so this is one of those situations. In this instance, we're not going to. However, if you wanted to have a situation where your imaging is happening on a separate network, this is where you would start to work through that process. You would have a separate network card in your machine, or in the case of virtualization, a separate virtual network card. You would have that set up. Again, I'll use the example of virtualization. You would have that set up on an internal network. So it's completely isolated, separate from your production network. And you would have an IP address set for that network card. Generally, you'd want a static IP address. And so if you were to have that scenario, you would say yes to this, and then you would change the default network interface to that internal network. Now, you could do this on a physical machine as well. You have 2 separate networks. One is plugged into your production network from one network card. The other goes to a switch. And basically on that second network interface going to the switch, you would end up with a DHCP server running on that network interface and be able to just push forward with that. Isn't it actually Friday night, David? I'm confused. I think it's still Friday. Okay, but anyways, for this scenario with this setup, we are going to stick with the default and run it on my production home network. So we're going to say no here. We're going to say yes to set up a router address for the DHCP server, and that's going to default to my router. Would you like DHCP to handle DNS? Again, your mileage may vary on your network. If you have a separate DNS server set up, you'll want to set it to that. In my case, at this point for this demo, we're going to say yes to this. And we're actually going to set that to the router. Would you like Fog server to use the Fog server for DHCP service? No, we're not going to do this. We don't need to install language packs. Again, if you're in another country or have another language you speak that you would prefer to run this in, your mileage may vary and you may choose a different option there. We're not going to enable HTTPS on this at this point. And we're going to leave the host name set to what it is. And then we just say yes to continue. And this part takes a little while. So let's see. I have never actually installed a driver for a new network interface on FreeBSD. Everything that I've done with Sigma NAS and older versions of FreeNAS before it, the adapters that I had selected were auto-detected. I'm not sure how difficult that is. One YouTube creator that you might check in with is Robo Nuggy. He's a guy out of the UK, and he does a lot of stuff with FreeBSD. And if anybody would be able to steer you in the right direction, he would be. And let's see if I can find his channel here real quick. Nuggy with an IE on the end. So, as far as the Fog install goes, this is pretty straightforward at this point. Once it gets through the rest of the installing of packages, it'll direct you to the a web page. You just have to click a button to finish the population of the database, and then you come back to the terminal and finish the install from there. And it's pretty straightforward for this stuff. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go over to my router page, and make the necessary change so that we'll be able to do imaging on this fog server yet tonight. If this decides to load up. All right. Okay, so I want to go into the backend settings and let's see. Where did that little setting go? Services. Obviously, I haven't changed this setting in a while. Seems like there's just a couple places it should be. And so far, I'm not finding them. Well, let's see if I can beat the clock here on this install. Let's see. Well, when in doubt, consult the Google machine. Okay. And I'm not going to beat the installer at this rate. That is a very old article. Let's see. All right, congratulations on crossing 1800. You're going to catch up and surpass me before too much longer. You'll probably beat me to 2000 at this rate. Carpentry and painting. Ooh. Sounds like that could be a fun project. I guess the question that begs to be asked is, are you going to include that as part of your video? All the preparation, construction, painting, etc. that you do. Okay. I know that's in here somewhere. think this is where it's at. Yes, it is. Advanced DHCP options. All right. So, I need to find out my IP address. And I'm on 74.112. We'll save that. And hopefully that doesn't have to do anything weird to my devices. That would knock me offline. I'm still staying connected. All right. So, oh yes, this one does the drop downs. Okay. So I actually did beat that. Yeah, I don't change this option very often, but when I was doing more fog videos, I was changing it on a more regular basis. So just to prep this a little bit. Oops. Okay. So we got to the part where we need to go to the management interface. So I'll go ahead and click on that. That should launch Firefox. Maybe. And we'll see what we can do with this. Okay. So we go to the URL listed on the terminal, and it's going to come up just to this little page where you have to click the button to add stuff to the database. And then it'll say update successful. We'll jump back to the terminal and hit enter. And we'll get to the end of this, and then we can jump back to Firefox and go into the system. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to jump back to jump back to VirtualBox. And we're going to go here to my Windows VM this is one of the Windows VMs that Microsoft makes available for no charge. I believe it's like a 90-day trial thing. This one has the older version of Microsoft Edge on Windows 10, and the VM is meant for testing web browser compatibilities. The other Windows VM I've got here is another one that Microsoft makes available, and this one has a bunch of developer tools installed on it, but that's a much larger VM. That's 127 gigs versus 40 on the Microsoft Edge VM. So we will take a look here, and we can go ahead and log into the new system. All right, username is fog, password is password, all lowercase. If you're doing this on a production machine, please, for the love of Pete, change that password ASAP. For demo purposes, since I don't leave these up and running all the time, I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. Okay. So, anybody else out there in YouTube land have any questions so far on fog? Go ahead and put those in the chat. Allegedly, we've got 4 people watching this live stream, so bonus on that. Okay, so we've got the fog server up and running. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take our Windows 10 VM. We're going to start this. In VirtualBox, you hit F12 to get to the boot menu. So we'll do that here. Okay. And we want to boot from LAN. So we hit L. And if everything went correctly, we should boot over the network. And it doesn't look like it's going so great tonight. The curse of the live demo rears its ugly head once again. Nope, didn't like that. All right. Well, just for the sake of humor, let's see. That's an even smaller. Oh, let's see. Let's jump over here. That's a smaller one. That's only 30 gigs. Let's give this one a try just for the sake of argument. Make sure it wasn't something weird with the Windows machine. Everything's always weird with a Windows machine. So we'll start this up. And we'll try to boot that one over the network. And it was a Windows thing, or at least it was something to do with the settings on that particular VM. So the first thing you have to do in Fog is you have to register the device with the system. So we're going to do a full host registration and inventory. And this just takes a moment to run through, and then we can shut this back down. And on most of these, we are just going to say no. A lot of these don't apply to Linux in most cases. And we're not deploying an image. And so that is running through the process. It's going to grab information about that VM. And then we can shut this down. All right, so part 1 is handled. We've got a host registered in our system. And so if we come to the host tab, and we click on list all hosts, it will in fact show our machine here. And it lists it by the host name that we entered as well as the MAC address. And so There are different things we can do with this. If we go into edit, we can set different pieces of information on this, and really don't have anything we need to change on this at the moment. Okay, so that's your hosts area. You can manage and delete hosts from here. It gives you the option to create a new host. You can enter part of the information in before you do the registration process. You can import and export if you're migrating servers, for instance. So we're going to jump over here to tasks. And let's see. We don't have any active tasks currently. We're going to do list all hosts. And what we want to do is a capture task. So we are taking an image from the VM, the other VM, and we are capturing it into Fog. And so the up arrow, the yellow icon here, is for capture. And it tells us invalid image assigned to host. Okay, no problem. Jump back to hosts. Excuse me. Jump over to images first. And we're going to say create new image. We're going to say Enso. We're going to select the operating system. And then under partition, under image type, I generally select for Linux, I select multiple partition image, single disk, not resizable. And then we're going to add that. So now we've got an image associated with the host. And we can come back to tasks, list all hosts. We can select capture. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've done this. List all hosts. We are going to edit our Enso host. And then host image, you select it from this drop down here. And update. And now it shouldn't complain at us. We come over to tasks, list all hosts, and capture. Tasked successfully. All right, so now we go back to VirtualBox. We can start this Enso VM and immediately hit F12, boot from the LAN, and this should kick off pretty much automatically and start the capture task. So it's booting over the network using Pixie Boot, and it's going to capture that image of that VM. I'll have to get some of that Black Label tape, David. That sounds interesting. I'm going to come back on camera here for a minute while this is doing its thing. So I've actually got the the P-Touch Cube printer, and that one you control and do all the typing on your cell phone over Bluetooth, and it's less bulky to carry around. The only thing I don't like about it, and I should really invest in some rechargeable batteries for it, but it takes, I think, six AAA batteries. Yeah, it's a nice little printer. I had an older P-Touch with the built-in keyboard, but I kind of like the Cube better, and I got it on sale shortly after it was introduced. So I've been thinking about just gifting the old one to my nieces and let them play with it. So there is a power connector on it. Yep, 9-volt power connector. So I could grab one of those as well. When I got this, I was doing a lot of on the road network installation and different things. And so it was very handy to have something portable that I didn't have to rely on wall power to use it. But yeah, it was a good purchase. So I oops. Um, Guess I somehow muted myself for a second there. So yes, it's got a 9-volt connector. Welcome, Kevin. How do you fix the constant looping issue after imaging? It never boots to Windows. That's a good question. I have not had that problem when I was imaging Windows machines, but I am not any longer in an environment where I've got Windows machines to image that I can sysprep first. I have restored, just done an image of a Windows machine that I own, and just as a backup, more or less, and I was able to successfully restore it without having a boot loop issue. That's a good question. I guess if I were in that situation, I would boot from a Windows USB stick and see if I could resolve it that way. but again, I've not had that problem. I do not envy you in that situation. But yeah, I haven't had that issue. Are you in a corporate environment, so where you've got an enterprise version with site licensing or whatnot, where you can sysprep first and be all on the up and up legally? I was in a environment like that a few years ago, and we imaged, oh shoot, about 200 machines with the fog server I set up at that location. Works on a VM, but not on a laptop. Ah, um, is your VM set to BIOS and the laptop is UEFI? That could possibly do it. Um, I'm not 100% sure that fog plays real nice with UEFI. The laptops that I imaged at my previous job, we had to set the laptops to legacy BIOS mode in order to push the image to them and then change them back to UEFI after we image them. And that worked just beautifully for the particular model laptops that we used at the time, and those were HP laptops. They were entry level business laptops. What is? And David brings up a good point. What's the age of the laptop? And maybe we can narrow this down a little bit. E5450 and 5470. Dells should be pretty well supported under fog. Let's see. It seems like there was some issue that I did run across in a forum post at one point. Yeah, it could be a BIOS option. Um, hmm. That's a good question, Kevin. I'm not sure. Um, in all honesty, that's probably a question I would pose um, to the forums and see if anybody there can help you. They generally have some pretty knowledgeable people lurking in the forums. So, all right. Um, so the imaging over the last 30 days graph does show that we've done one image. And so, of course, if we wanted to take and deploy this, it would just be sort of um, the opposite sequence. So I wish I had a better answer for you, Kevin. If you do come up with a solution, feel free to post on any of my fog videos on my channel, and share the knowledge. I'm all for the sharing of knowledge, because it's hard for any given person to be familiar with every hardware variant and laptop out there when it comes to some of these things, and there's always some little quirk that you have to work around. So okay, so just for the sake of making this a complete fog video, we're gonna make another VM here. And so we need to do one with a 30 gig hard drive. Say enso fog restore. And that is based on Ubuntu. Say continue. Not Turbo Linux. Ubuntu. Turbo Linux isn't going to do us much good. 2 gigs of RAM. And we're going to give it, say, a 35 gig hard drive. So it's a little bit bigger than the image we're going to push back to it. Go into settings. And I'm just going to do my normal changes. And network, bridged, storage. We're not going to add an ISO image on this one. We're going to force it to boot from the network right from the start. And let me go back to full screen with this. All right, so if we go ahead and start this up, and again, F12. And boot from LAN. And with a little luck, this will take right off. There we go. All right. We're going to deploy an image. And so for deploying an image, you log into Fog with your credentials. And you get a list of available images. And we're going to choose ENSO. And then we can just sit back and wait. And, or we should be able to sit back and wait. There it goes. This does generally perform better when you're using a physical network instead of doing most of the things over a virtual network. So again, we get our nice little progress bars, and I'm going to drop that back over here. And it'll just sit there, and it will push the image to that new VM that we created. And once this is done, we'll test to make sure it boots. Yeah, that's the basics of running through a fog install and just doing a bog standard basic capture and deploy. There's a whole lot more to this software. Some of it I've never used, Some of it I've experimented with to some level. Um, you can deploy printers out with this. You can there's a fog agent that will run on uh, your machines so that you can push out software updates, run scripts, all kinds of different things from the fog server. There is some overlap between what fog does and what something like Ansible does, as far as your configuration management and different things of that nature. um, Fog, even though it runs on Linux, it it's really sort of continuing that kind of old school Windows mindset, where you're creating master images and you're loading different software on the master image, and then you sysprep and you deploy it out. With Linux, you don't really have to worry so much about that sysprep type of situation. But it's one of those things. There are some quirks with, for instance, Ubuntu. If you were going to use something like this, I would generally suggest using an OEM install of Ubuntu. Do your customizations. It does have something similar to sysprep and basically cleans out your temporary user and makes it ready to deploy. I've not tested it with Active Directory using Samba 4. Let's go back over here. There we go. It does, however, have in the fog configuration section, it has, let's see, fog settings. And there are let's see, Active Directory defaults. So you could automatically join a Windows server to Active Directory. And again, with that, normally you just need to have the administrator credentials for the Active Directory server. And I'm not sure there's any reason it wouldn't work with Samba 4 Active Directory. Seems like there was one other option worth discussing in here. Oops. Maybe I was thinking of something else. So for joining to Active Directory, it should work with the Samba Active Directory. You just fill out your little form here, and it should connect and be able to join a PC to an Active Directory domain. Again, not something I've tested. And when I did the project at my previous employer, we were on a time crunch, so that's one of the things that I wanted to explore. But since we had I don't know, 200 or 300 laptops to image, it's not something that we ever got to. So if we come back to our dashboard, it should show computers imaged 1, and there we've got some network access again. Oh, not that one. Let's see. And yeah, and so Fog Restore is running. If I remember the password I used on this. And so that pushing that image out from Fog did in fact work. So that's the very basics of Fog. I seem to get a lot of questions on this product, and generally there are questions that I can answer, and then there are some that are a little bit beyond what I've ever used it for. And so more and more I am pushing people. Is that better? That's better. I'm pushing people over to the Fog Project forums, and that's at forums.fogproject.org. And generally the people here are pretty knowledgeable. The lead developer does answer some questions, and if there's a question that I can't answer, this is generally where I will send people. At this point in time, as far as I know, my Fog videos are the most popular Fog videos on YouTube. But it's been part of my niche from the beginning of my channel back in 2017, and I've just kept updating them as new versions of Fog have come out, and tried to answer questions the best I can as people have asked them. And it's interesting because I will still get questions on that very first Fog video that it's 3 years old, and there are a couple things that in some isolated cases I actually refer people to that video, because in that video I set up a VM with 2 virtual network cards, and just did the whole isolation piece for imaging on a separate network, having the Fog server act as the DHCP server for that secondary network. And that situation can work very well. That's very similar to the way I set it up at that previous job for imaging all those laptops. And there are different options, and when it comes down to brass tacks, it's all the same networking concepts, whether you're using a physical network or virtualization. And if you can do it on one, you should be able to do it on either with minimal difficulty. And actually, when it comes down to it, it's almost a little simpler when you're dealing with physical components. But for the purpose of these demos, it's not always as easy for me to set up physical components in the space that I've got to do these types of demos. Um, so hopefully somebody will get some value out of this little tutorial demo. I'm not sure if I will continue doing live streams on Friday nights. It might become an every other Friday night thing. And as I start to roll out Patreon, there will likely be a Friday night patron only live stream. So, I'm still playing with a few details, but my goal with rolling out Patreon is to be able to start buying a few extra gadgets to review for the channel, and over time slowly improve camera and lighting and different things of that nature. And who knows, maybe a microphone better than the $20 experiment that I bought earlier this year. I'm a little disappointed with that mic for use for live streams, but with a little bit of EQ playing, it doesn't sound awful when you're using it in OBS. So, are there any other questions out there, or comments, or anything of that nature? All right. Well, if there aren't any questions at this point, thank you to everybody that's come and attended, and thank you to Kevin and David for participating in the chat. I think we were actually up to 5 people watching at one point in time. And maybe they came in late and didn't stick around to see the whole process. But it's all good. I find a lot more people tend to watch even my live streams back after the fact, and I'm starting to pick up a little bit of momentum on the live streaming, I think, but we'll see. I will be releasing some pre-recorded videos here before too much longer. And yeah, we will hopefully kickstart the channel a little bit more and cruise towards that 2,000 subscriber goal by the end of the year. And I'm sure hoping that 2021 is a better year overall for people than what 2020 has been. So on that note, thank you to everybody that's watched. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I will be live again on Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I've got a couple of interesting topics for that, and one of those is going to include STEM or STEAM gifts for kids that might be interested in technology-related careers. And yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that. It's a sort of timely topic with the holidays coming up, and give us something positive to end the year out with. So if you can make it on Sunday, great. If not, hopefully you guys will be able to catch me in the replay at a later time, and we'll go from there. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe out there if you have to be out, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great night, everybody.